What's up, everybody? Brotrio here, and we will start talking about 2019 games eventually, but it's never too late to look back. So we will be making our definitive list of the top 10 bosses of 2018. Well, we're starting off our list with a little bit of an odd duck. You may consider it a boss fight, you may not, but this is the closest thing to a boss fight in one of 2018's best games. We're talking about the battleship from Red Dead Redemption 2. Now, this was an awesome, explosive, bombastic, cinematic moment in this game, and it's an enemy that took a lot of fire to take down, so that's why we're considering it a boss.
I mean, I would consider it a boss. I mean, it's not a singular person, but it definitely is like a big obstacle to overcome.
Yeah.
I mean, you're on Gorma, and
it's the best part of Gorma.
Can't get off Gorma without taking out this battleship.
Yeah, it's the least boss-like thing on this list. Everything else on this list is definitively a boss. So this is really going to be the only weird one. But you knew I couldn't pass up the chance to talk about Red Dead again.
Coming in at the tail end of 2018, Monster Boy gave us an amazing game with some awesome boss fights, but the cream of the crop of that game was the final boss, Lord Zaros. It culminated everything into one really awesome and flowy boss fight. You had to use each one of your forms to take him out, each with a specific fighting pattern that you had to get used to, and it was pretty challenging and very fun and pretty cinematic. Plus, once you finally defeat him, you get this awesome anime-style cinematic.
Yeah, that cinematic was amazing.
I just love when the final boss is like the best boss in the game.
Yes.
Like, it's so rare, it seems like.
And I love when they make you just use all of your skills at the same time.
The fight with Lord Zaros was just a very satisfying end to a very satisfying game.
"2018 brought us hands down one of the best Mega Man titles to come out in years. Mega Man 11 from start to finish was amazing. But the final battle with Wily was just impressive because you had to use all of your skills you've built up. He's using the double gears way better than the Robot Masters ever were.
Yeah.
And he's just like zip zooming around, hitting you with everything he's got, and you have to fight for your life. Dr. Wily was not pulling his punches at all, and it made for a great boss fight.
There is one game character out there that is no stranger to taking on the horrors of outer space. From cosmic monsters to world-destroying gods, Kirby has seen it all. But the latest in his repertoire of monsters to destroy is Void Termina. Now, Void Termina is not the hardest boss on this list, but that's just because Kirby's so powerful. But he is, true to form, a true monster. Kirby's flying around on Popstar with his buddies, shooting lasers at him the whole time, and he has multiple forms like any good final boss should. From top to bottom, this monster is scary, but once you destroy his head and head inside him and see that smiling blob coming at you, that is the core of his being.
It's so off-putting.
Yeah, it's very creepy.
He spits you out, and he has a gorilla form or a bird form. I forget which one comes next, but then you go back inside him, beat up his core again, and once you finally get to his last form, the happy blob pops out of his body, and Kirby has this amazing beam struggle with him for the fate of the universe, presumably. Kirby game, not heavy on story, but anyway. So Kirby lets out a vicious battle cry, and it was way cooler than it should have been, and vaporizes the cosmic monster as Kirby is wont to do, just because he's Kirby and he's doing his job.
In a game so full of boss fights, we could have made a top 10 list of just this. Monster Hunter World gave us the Anjanath. And it's a fantastic boss fight. Like, it's so satisfying to take down. It's not the hardest one in the game, but it's one of the more fun ones to fight. And it's such an iconic part of Monster Hunter.
Yeah, it's on the box art.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
like,
they were like teasing this behemoth of a monster for so long. Like, it felt so good to finally get in there.
Yeah, all the lead up with scraping the mucus and following the footprints.
Tracking it. It was all over the place, terrorizing you. Anytime you're trying to hunt the great Jagras or anything, it would show up and just murder you.
And then
hopefully
you finally got to take it down.
Like, I'm going to fight this T-Rex. And then it starts flying at you and it starts breathing fire. And you're like, oh no, what just happened?
Stretches his nose out. Weird. That's the only way you can top a T-Rex is you make it breathe fire. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And the Anjanath was just perfect. I loved it.
Now, one of my favorite games of 2018 was The Messenger, and that is no secret to anybody. And it had tons of amazing bosses in it, but by far my favorite, due to the difficulty of it, the fun factor, and the music, was the Arcane Golem. Has like the best track in the whole soundtrack, in my opinion.
I love that song.
It's one of the coolest looking bosses, plus it is pretty monumental, marking like a big change in gameplay coming up. And it was just like really fun. It was the typical thing where it had like giant hands and you had to jump on its hands to get to his head and chop him in the face. And you can just do the wind step every time to stay chopping his face. But then he changes it up and starts making the ground come up and doing different stuff with his hands. It was just an amazing boss that really stood the test of time and got the message across.
One of the most surprising things about Super Smash Bros. Ultimate was how good the World of Light ended up being. It's not a game known for its story, of course, but watching everybody die at the beginning with the whole Galeem, like, Master Hand Beam Barrage thing, it broke everybody. Like, nobody likes watching that. Later on, Darkon comes into the picture, and he's just as bad, if not worse. But then, in the culmination of the end, you fight both of them together as a final boss, and it is tough.
Yeah, the coolest part is they're like enemies, so they're fighting each other the whole time, too.
I loved that so much.
Not to mention the build up to it. You gotta climb over this structure while they're each like trying to attack you, and then fight through all the other bosses in order to get to them. And it was just an amazing like fight that was pulled off beautifully with the Smash Brothers mechanics.
And that song it was playing in the background was just fantastic too.
Yeah.
Really set the mood. And it made it feel like you were saving the universe, because you were.
One of the best games of 2018 was easily Marvel's Spider-Man. Holy crap, this game was good. From the combat to the swinging to the world to the story to the characters. Everything about it was good, including the boss fights. But for this list, we had to choose one. We went with the duo of Electro and Vulture. That fight was so good.
Yeah, it was it made you feel even more like Spider-Man, because it was mainly aerial stuff you had to do. So you had to like swing up to get to him and then zip to him and then punch him. God, it was satisfying.
Super fast, super fun, and super swingy. It was just like 90% air. It was awesome. You could do that whole fight without landing if you were good enough. And Vulture's slinging his wing blades or whatever at you. Electro's shooting his electricity everywhere. You got to break the generators, then swing over and punch Vulture in the face. Then he's like, "Oh man, I'm old. I better go back off for a second." Beat up on Electro. Then he's like, "Dang man, Spider-Man's strong." Then he backs off for a second. But it ends with you webbing them both to the floor and giving them up to the police. And just like Daniel said earlier, really, really made you feel like Spider-Man to take down those two villains.
Octopath Traveler brought us one of the most terrifying looking final bosses I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, it's a true nightmare.
Like, Galdera, he's just this like muscle fiber foot of like made out of eyeballs with dead bodies attached to him, and that's the first form.
He's a monster god made out of dead bodies.
Yeah, like
it's horrible.
In the game, he's like the god of destruction. He's been like sealed off for a while, so he is pissed and he is ready to come back into the world.
He put his own daughter in his chest so he could come back to life.
Oh yeah, she was a definite part of his resurrection, literally. And you had to throw everything you had and more at this boss. Because it splits your party into two groups. You have to fight both parts with different people. So you can't just have 4 awesome ones and 4 mediocre ones. You have to have everybody up to snuff and ready to go. And then you get up to the main form, and he's just like this scary Hell Knight. Like he's got this weird helmet, like a sword for an arm, another arm coming out of nowhere.
Hanging out of his chest.
Daughter in the chest.
Yeah, it's horrible.
And you have to, just like the other form, you have to throw everything you have at it again and just hope that you win. And it was intense and awesome.
Some of the best boss fights are the optional ones. Our second place went to like a hefty JRPG optional boss fight, but the top spot of 2018 boss fights goes to Sigrun, Queen of the Valkyries, because she is like the epitome of optional boss fights for this year. You have to fight through so many other Valkyries to even get to her, and then she just like, you killed all my friends.
You gotta fight through optional bosses to get to the final optional boss.
Yeah, it's amazing. And Sigrun earns her title of Queen of the Valkyries because she is like an amalgamation of all the Valkyries you fought up to this point in fighting style and power, and is just a hefty like hill to overcome. And once you do, like, you are like, God, it's so satisfying to get that final chop into her like collarbone. And Kratos just, I mean, you gotta use the Leviathan Axe, the Blaze of Chaos, Atreus' bow, and many other aspects of the game to even stand a chance against her, and you'll be dodging and shielding with the best of them by the end, and it just flows so well, and it's possibly the most satisfying thing I've done in years.
Thank you, friends. You have saved the Valkyries.
Well, those were our picks for 2018's best boss fights. Let us know what your picks were for some of the better boss fights of the year that we may have missed. And why don't you go ahead and click that like and subscribe button and click that bell to be the first to hear about any Bro Trio content coming out. We've been Bro Trio, thanks for watching, and we'll catch y'all next time with more content.